Good evening, folks. Please take your seats. At this time, I'd like to call the 2014 Bow School District annual meeting to order and ask for Abby Knappen from the Girl Scouts of the Green and White Mountains to present the colors.
Girl Scout attention. Girl Scouts, Girl Scouts, please post the flags. Color guard, honor your flag. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Color guard dismissed.
Please remain standing for our national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you. That was Amanda Thompson with our national anthem. Thank you. And from the Girl Scouts troops of the Green and White Mountains, with Abby Knappen was Angie Smith, Kechi Kafaso, Maddie S., and Emily DeRocher. Good evening, folks. My name is Jim Hayden. I'm your school district moderator, and welcome to our meeting tonight. If folks are needing seats, I think there's a few down front here. And I'm pretty sure that the town meeting took all the heat out of this room last night, so sorry for the temperature, but I think it will be okay for the limited agenda we have for tonight. So, welcome. With me up front is our school board. From my left, going right, Robert Loof, our chair, Deborah Alfano, June Branscombe, Dee Trabig next to Deb Alfano, June Branscombe next to Dee, and Ginger Frazier, our superintendent, Dean Cascadden, and our business manager, Dwayne Ford. Thank you all. Before we get to the business of the meeting, I'd like to go over the procedures, which are the same procedures we've used for years and years. Yeah, we went over them last night as well. But I thought I would go through the procedures to give you a sense of how we're going to conduct the meeting tonight. They are in your town report in the blue pages if you need to refer to them, but generally speaking, we're going to take all of the articles in the warrant in order. Once each one has been moved and seconded, there'll be a presentation by a member of the school board, and after that presentation, it'll be open for amendment, discussion, and debate. And then after we finish the debate and discussion, there'll be voting on each article. Anybody who'd like to speak to a warrant article will be asked to go to each one of the microphones in the corner. We would ask that you not speak until you're recognized. And once recognized, you'll have a chance to ask questions, make points, and otherwise discuss the article that's in order. You don't have to be at a microphone if you have a point of order that you'd like to ask. If anybody has a question about how we conduct the meeting or what's going on, it's perfectly acceptable to interrupt the discussion, to ask for a point of order. We simply want to make sure that everybody understands what's happening and how it's happening and where we're going. So please, if you have any questions about what's going on or what we're about to do, please raise a point of order. And certainly if you catch me doing something you don't think is right or in proper order, I'm more than happy to hear it. We rely on a lot of folks to keep things moving in the right direction. We currently have wristbands on everybody who's a registered voter. And tonight, we don't have any ballot votes, so we will be voting by wristbands. And the procedural general will be asked for a show of hands. And then if I can't call it by my eye, I will ask my assistants to count the votes. If folks ever have a question about the vote itself and how good my eye was, you have the right to request a counted vote, and I will certainly always take care of that. But we'll be doing a show of hands tonight. One thing that we always stumble on or sometimes stumble on is the overheads. So if you have any issues seeing the overheads or if you think there's something wrong overhead, please feel free to speak up. Before we get started, there's a few more folks that I failed to recognize, and I should because they helped make this meeting happen. To my right is John Rich, our school district clerk, Roy Bailey, who helps with the audio visuals, and Bob Jakes is up in the back running all of the microphones. So thank you for all your help tonight. And at this point, I would ask if anybody has any questions about how we're going to conduct the meeting. Okay. So let's move right to the warrant. To the inhabitants of the school district of the town of Bow qualified to vote in district affairs, you are hereby notified to meet at the Bow High School auditorium in said district on Friday, the 14th of March, 2014, at 7 o'clock in the evening to act upon the following subjects. The first article is to hear reports of agents, auditors, committees, officers chosen or to take any other action. And this is the part of the meeting where we traditionally have a presentation by the superintendent as to the state of affairs of our school district. And at this point, I will recognize Dr. Teen Cascadden.
Thank you very much. First slide, please. This is a familiar slide for those who've been coming ever since I've been here. We've had a 23% enrollment decline from 2002 to 2013. The state of New Hampshire at the same time has had about a 12% enrollment decline. We as a state are getting a little older, a little grayer, and we don't have school age population like we used to have. One of our issues is we're not keeping our young people in state, and there's a number of reasons for that. But Bow especially has had that 23% enrollment decline. Next slide. These are our individual school enrollments. And for the first time this year, I've included on the very bottom Dunbarton, because they will be joining us in an area enrollment, and gives you an idea of the schools over time. My most concerning line on that slide is the orange slide, which is our elementary school enrollment. And we continued, I didn't put it in this year, but we've tracked the births to the first grade enrollment, and there just aren't that many births happening in Bow. And our elementary school, is continuing to get smaller. Next slide, please. This shows the enrollment this year, 2013. The official date for enrollment is October 1, and I've included both Dunbarton and Bow in there, and to give you an idea of how the area agreement is going to affect our enrollment as we go on. And really, the grade that we're looking at, this is this year's grade, so next year we'll be getting the 7th, 8th, and 9th graders, so really the 6th, 7th, and 8th there will be coming into our schools. But again, an issue for me when I look at this is our 1st and 2nd grade enrollments are pretty small. I mean, they're not matching. You're continuing to have a decline there. Next slide. This shows what we're trying to do with the Bow area enrollment and the MOU with Hooksett. If you look at the way Bow High School is teamed in 9th and 10th grade, 160 students makes a really optimal grade. And so if we're looking at next year is 2014, good, yeah, I can. Next year's 2014, which will have 135 Bow students. We have 25 Dunbarton students slated to come here, and we have 6 Hooksett students coming with the MOU. And what the board looked at this is, we're trying to fill that 160 student slot. That's the real good capacity for our high school. And what's going on, we have the area agreement with Dunbarton, which means those kids, have the right to come here, and we have to accept all of those students. But with Hooksett, what we've done with the MOU with them is said, we're going to give you a number every year. And this year, we gave them the number 8. And only 6 kids came. But this year we were very, very tight reaching that 160. We were afraid of getting too many kids into 9th grade, because that 160 with the 8 sections gives us a class size around 20, which is what we're looking at. But if you look at the next years, like 215, which would be this year's 7th grade, we're definitely under that 160 threshold. And as you go on, we definitely have capacity to bring, these kids in and accept the 10 from Hooksett if we indeed get 10 from the Hooksett MOU. If you go to the next slide, kind of combining what we do is called a projection of what our high school size may look like. So if I look at the 2014 slide, it's the first one with the yellow and blue and brown on top. That's our projection for next year. We take we do a simple projection, so the grades that would be in high school just in Bow and in Dunbarton, we add those people up and put them in there. We add up the number of students we expect possibly to come from Hooksett. And there's a blue section in there which we factored in, actually Dwayne's factored in to tell you the truth, of what our historical growth has been. So putting all those factors together, we don't project the high school size to be over 660. I mean, we'll be under that 660 capacity, which is, we've been at 660 before. If you go back to 2007, that was the largest the school was, and that will be a good size for us to be. We don't know what's going to happen with Hooksett. Right now, we have a 5-year MOU with them, so I only put 5 years of Brown on top, and that's, considering 10 kids a year join. We may not get those 10 kids a year join. These are just predictions from what we see now. We're not sure what's going to happen with the area agreement. Will students move into Dunbarton knowing that they can come to Bow schools? Will more houses sell in Bow and turn over and bring more Bow students in? We don't know those factors right now, but we think comfortably, even if we get some growth, we're going to be able to handle people in the high school. All right, continuing to the next slide. I just put down some things here that we're looking at for next year. Again, the transition to the area agreement, bringing Dunbarton in, will be a multi-district SAU next year. So for Dwayne and I and people in the SAU office, that changes our jobs. We will now have 3 entities to take care of instead of 1. We'll have Dunbarton, Bow, and we'll have SAU 67, which is the combined of the 2 of them. Our teachers and our principals, our administration, and our students in grades, in the affected grades, next year 7 through 9, we're doing a lot of transition work. We're doing a lot of transition work in curriculum to make sure that the Dunbarton students, when they come over here in 7th grade, are ready to mesh with our students. What's happening in assessment and curriculum is the state and the chief state school officers are putting forth a new curriculum and a new assessment, and we're actually piloting that year. We're getting ready to take that. That's going to overtake NECAP, and that's going to be our accountability assessment that is going to be put forth by the state. We have commissioned this year a special education study. One of the places that we've seen in the budget over the last couple of years was an escalation in special ed costs. And we said, so we really need to go in and look at that study. The board's going to be able to start looking at that at their next board meeting. And it's going to look at, what are we doing in special education? Are we appropriate staffed, appropriate level? And we have those things going on. District curriculum and technology, we have 2 positions in the budget to provide more district level leadership in those areas. Although it was first on the warrant, it is now taken off the warrant, but the board is going to have an all-day kindergarten study. And it's not going to be, the board is writing the charge for that and setting up the committee for that. And we'll be spending the year studying the provision of all-day kindergarten, both funding and effectiveness and building and costs and all those sort of things. We have programs coming at our middle school. We have a great dynamic administrative team that's come in there, and they're looking at a lot of things. They're looking at scheduling. They're looking at how we provide foreign language. They're looking at how students move through the school day. So those are happening. And then next year, our 3-year teachers contract will be up, and we'll be negotiating a new contract with our teachers. And so next year at this time, if negotiations are successful, we'll be bringing a contract forth to this meeting for the teachers to vote on. Next slide. A little bit more on the horizon. This has been an issue that's come up in town, and the board asked me to clarify a little bit of what's going on with Bow Elementary School. 2 or 3 years ago, we did a study, and we asked an architect to come in and evaluate the building top to bottom and just give us a complete idea of what that building needs and what could be done to that building. We didn't put any limits on the architect. And so the architect, being an architect, came back with some great ideas about restructuring the front of the building and some great ideas to kind of do some cool things at the building. But really what we were looking for is what do we need to do immediately? And they looked at the roof. They said, well, the roof's okay. I mean, you're going to have to replace it pretty soon. You're going to have to put a sprinkler in it eventually. You're going to have to put backup generation there, because if you put a sprinkler, you need backup generation to run the well. So there were certain things that were put in there that said, down the road, there are some issues in that building that you're going to have to take care of. Not immediately, but things you're going to want to take care of. When you put all of those together, it came to $5.2 million. That figure includes all of the proposals, including new construction. Now, the board never said we're going to do all of those proposals in that study. They said, thank you very much for the study. They looked at it and they said, oh, there's some things we want to do right away. We're going to do a propane conversion. We're going to take care of an old oil tank that needs to be taken care of. And there were some things they looked at and said, that's nice, but we may never do that because it's just not, some of the big building changes, they said that. But the board has that to chew on. They've been thinking about funding capabilities for that. Should we in the next couple of years start putting away some money in capital reserve funds? How can we use our present capital reserve funds that we have stored money away? And by the time we get to talk about this in a couple years, what's going to be the enrollment at that elementary school and what are going to be the needs? They may be very different than the needs we have right now. So they wanted me to make sure, this 5.2 million figure has been thrown out there like it's a hard figure and that it's going to happen in 3 years. And the board wanted to say that may not necessarily be so. It's out there. It's something that needs to be discussed. It needs to be discussed of how it's going to be funded, and the scope of the project needs to be discussed of what the scope is going to be. All right, last couple things we're going to cover. We always cover achievement. The first one you have up there is this year's NECAP results. That's our accountability results, and it shows Bow versus New Hampshire, both in math and reading, and writing is thrown in at 5, 8, and 11. And you can see that Bow is comfortably ahead of the state average in these NECAP scores as we go along. If you go to the next slide. You really can't see that. Oh, sorry. There's a better one? What this is the difference between New Hampshire and between Bow and New Hampshire scores. So if I took the difference between those two bar graphs before, between the yellow and the orange, it shows that Bow is 10 to 15 percentage points above the state on the percent proficient at each grade level. And for me, the other thing I see that over time, that gap widens, which shows me what I think, or my interpretation of that, is that as kids go through the Bow school system, yes, they come in with some advantages. We have a great community. We have some demographics in this community that have some wealth. And we start with great kids, but also through the years, I think you see an improvement as we go forward. Especially, I think you see that in writing, between the writing 5, the writing 8, and the writing 11. And there's some general improvement there. And then on the last slide, what I have here is some other quality indicators that we look for both schools. I think either last year or the year before, we were at 0 dropouts. That was an initiative of the state. But the class of 2013, last year's class, 93% went to college and 76% went to 4-year schools. You can see the AP test results. We have a lot of students who take AP tests. We have 2/3 of them have a passing score. And that's a statistic you have to be careful of because you have both equity and excellence. If you want to push equity, let's have as many students as possible take this test. But if you have as many students as possible take the test, then maybe your percentage of scoring passing scores will not be as high. So when you actually go and look at the AP test results, they have an equity index, and we do actually quite well in that. We have a lot of kids take tests, and many of them do very well in the test, as you can see. I threw the SAT averages up there because I think that's a test that people understand a little bit better than the NECAP. And you can see that Bow's SAT averages, they're higher than the New Hampshire averages, and they're higher than the national averages, and that's that's a good test. And again, we have a high participation in the SAT. So you have to think about that again, participation and percentage. And finally, the last one I threw up there, we just happened to get this. We do graduate surveys. And for the class of 2008, when they were given a 5-year out graduate survey, granted that the number of surveys returned wasn't super high, probably about 1/3 of the class returned the surveys, but 73% of the kids said they transitioned well into college. And when asked about the usefulness of their high school education, 33% said excellent and 42% said good. And the qualitative data, when kids come back and talk to us about going to college, they say, we're prepared for college. We know how to write, we know how to read, we know how to reason, and we're disciplined, and we know how to, and we have pretty good success. So I'd just end there and say thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So Article 1 is merely listening to reports, so we don't actually vote on that, which would then take us to Article 2. to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the Budget Committee's recommended amount of $26,958,222 for the support of schools, for the payment of salaries for the school district officials and agents, and for the payment of the statutory obligations of the district. This article does not include appropriations voted in other warrant articles. This does include the cost of the Bow School District Food Service Program. The school board recommends this budget, this amount. It requires a majority vote, and it's recommended by the Budget Committee 6-1 and the school board 5-0. Do I have a motion?
I move Article 2 as presented.
And a second?
And I'll second.
Thank you. Article 2 has been moved and seconded, and I will recognize June for a presentation.
The first thing is the total operating budget is the Article 2, $26,958,222, less the food service budget of $697,704. In 2014 and 15, the proposed operating budget of $26 million, sorry, those numbers are bigger than I deal with all the time. $26,260,518. 2013-2014 approved operating budget was $25,151,667. The operating budget increase is $1,108,851 with a percentage change of plus 4.41%. The estimated revenue is 2014-15 estimated revenue is $5,747,049. The increased tuition revenue, $1,130,089. The increased other revenue is $232,944. Decreased state revenue is $175,939. The 2013-14 estimated revenue is $4,623,205. Increase in estimated revenue is $1,123,844, with a percentage change of an increase of 24.31%. And this is really primarily due to the 7th, 8th, and 9th graders that will be joining us from Dunbarton. The tax impact increased expenditure budget is $1,108,851. The increased estimated revenues will be $1,123,844. Estimated property tax decrease, $14,993. Estimated change in tax rate is what, 0.2%? And then the change in the tax rate is 0.1%. One of the goals of the board when we met and we discussed the budget and we went through it over several days was to have a tax-neutral operating budget. If you take a look at the diagrams here, you'll notice that the instructional programs use up about 63% of our budget, and this is a really important piece of our budget because this is the regular education, special education, the gifted programs, co-curricular activities, athletics, and the vocational schooling. The next slide is the budget expenditures by object, and if you'll notice, the salaries are 49% of our budget. That's pretty much similar to what it was last year. If you go to the left where it says benefits, 26%, that is all people in this district. Then if you look at services, 12%, those are the tuition expenses for students who have to go outside the district for special ed. We have contracted physical therapists and speech therapists. And then you go up to supplies and equipment. This is proposed by the principals. This is a request by them. It covers the utilities and any equipment or material they need for the programs. And then the other 6% is debt service, and this is for the high school bond and the memorial bond. And then estimated revenue sources. As you can see, 78% is the property taxes. However, we have the addition of tuition of 5%, and that should be going up as we get more students from Dunbarton. The increase has been due to the 7th, 8th, and 9th grades coming in. And we also have some students from Hooksett, and we actually have one student from Deerfield. So our reputation is out there. Okay, both school district history of state aid, this is problematic, and it's going to be, it's been decreasing. And this year it is $1,322,715. It has decreased. And that's a significant amount of money that the board and the administration have had to deal with when planning the budget.
Okay, thank you. Anybody like to speak to Article 2? Please.
Hi, Steve Elgert from Putney Road. First, I'd like to thank the school board for all your work for the year. I know a lot of people don't realize how much work that actually is, and I certainly appreciate what you do. That said, I think Dr. Cascadin made a few good points about the declining enrollment and the decrease in the number of young people moving into the state of New Hampshire and specifically into Bow. I'd like to point out that the kindergarten all-day study committee, I think, is an excellent idea, but I wonder why it's going to take you a full year to realize what a lot of other area towns have already done. I think it's a very good selling point for people moving into the town. I would hope that the committee could do the study very quickly and potentially get that going for this September instead of having now to wait another whole year and a half for that to happen. In order to facilitate that, I know that you'll probably need to add at least one full-time equivalent school teacher, which, according to my calculations, comes out to be about $85,000. Given other expenses such as specials and other curriculum changes, I would round that up to about $100,000, and therefore I would like to increase the bottom line figure in this article to $27,058,222, with the extra $100,000 to be used only if the kindergarten study committee finds that it's a good idea to do the kindergarten, and to dedicate that extra $100,000 for the kindergarten full-time, and to start this September.
Okay, so what I understand from what you said would be a motion to amend Article 2 to increase the number by $100,000. Is that correct? Okay. So the motion to amend Article 2 has been made to raise it to $27,058,222. Do I have a second? Okay, seconded. Would anyone like to speak to the amendment to Article 2?
Thanks. First, thanks, Steve, for coming up. I think part of our thinking was that, first of all, it was felt that we didn't have a clear charge for this committee. And we felt that if we were going to present it, it was actually a separate article that you were going to vote on. But we felt that it needed to have a clear charge with clear tasks. I think for me, one of the unknowns is exactly what it seems like we're talking about, is how much is this going to cost? And in addition, I'd like to know if there are any communities that suggested all-day kindergarten, but perhaps turned it down. And why did they turn it down? And how does our center across the street, how does that play into what we may have? As well as, are there additional ways to perhaps finance it? These are all kind of tasks that the school board came up with regarding this committee. As far as the length, I think one of the things that we talked about is if we have it over the summer, then we can include teachers as part of the committee. Where the original idea was to have a 9 or 10 member committee where we would have a couple school board members, members of the public, and then teachers to study this. But we wanted to make sure we covered all of the bases, because when we present it to the electorate, we need to have the answers that from the questions that may be asked, including financing, including how does this fit into the program, all of that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to say that it is on the horizon, but there's a lot that I don't know about it right now that I'm not comfortable in saying that we can have this ready by the fall. Anybody else?
Hi, Lee Albrick, 2 Timmons Road. I just appreciate it if you guys could clarify for me what the cost per student is doing year to year. I understand the taxes are flat, but the enrollment is declining. Could you explain that gap? Thank you.
Dwayne?
So can I ask you, so we're now debating the amendment to Article 2, which relates, so, and I'm not,
I apologize.
and your question is certainly in order, but let's stick with the amendment for the moment, and then I'll give us some chance to actually think of the answer. So, does anyone else want to speak to the amendment?
I was going to add something.
Okay, please.
As an educator, I just wanted to add that we're very aware of the value of full-day kindergarten. I don't think there's a study out there that doesn't say that, but again, we want to proceed cautiously and make sure we have all the information and community input before we pursue that avenue.
Okay, the discussion is on the amendment to Article 2. Is anyone else wants to speak to it? Do you want to, go ahead.
Thanks again. I appreciate your comments, and I certainly understand where you're coming from. I would like to emphasize, though, that the way I worded this is that the money would only be spent if the school board was in agreement that you were ready to do it in September. And with the idea that if you came to that conclusion, you wouldn't then have to wait a whole nother year, a whole nother budget cycle to get it going. I honestly don't think that you need to reinvent the wheel here. More and more communities are going to this. I think it's a competitive disadvantage in Bow to live here and not have a full-day kindergarten. So I want to just try to light a fire under this a little bit and realize the ability to make the decision in a way that doesn't take forever.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the amendment? Okay, so seeing no more people interested in speaking, I'll call a vote. All those in favor of amending Article 2, please signify by raising your hand with your wristband. Thank you. Please put your hands down. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Okay, the vote is in the negative. The amendment fails, and I so declare it. So So we're now back to Article 2 as presented in the warrant. And please, actually didn't hear your question. I was so worried about the procedure of it all. So I don't know if it needs to be restated. But
Please restate.
yeah,
I apologize.
no worries.
My question was, I need clarification of the gap between the flat tax rate year to year and the declining enrollment year to year, because that tells me there's a gap in the cost per student, and I'd just like clarification of what that gap consists of.
We're going to pass this right down the table.
The tax rate part, I'm a little unclear on, but we'll start with this and see if this does it. What we try to do is we try to, over time, compare the district to what the state calculates cost per pupil is statewide. So that's what this graph reflects. The blue is the state average, and the red is the Bow School District cost per pupil. And that goes up until 2012-13. That's the last year that the state has done that calculation and posted it. Two other sources. We provide a comparison of a number of districts with the Bow District. That's posted on our website, and we also included that in the budget hearing documents. So we do about 25 school districts that we compare ourselves to that have similar achievement on the NECAP test. That's kind of the filter that we put it through. And the average comparison district for 2012-13 was $16,066, and their average enrollment was 1,345. For our district, comparing ourselves to those, our cost per pupil was $15,974 with an enrollment of 1,419. So what we also try to look at is we want that average comparison districts to be similar in size to us as well. Because when you compare yourself to larger districts, and I use Bedford as an example, you can use other districts like Manchester, there's an economy of scale in terms of the number of students that they have, because there's a number of positions in a school district that you'll only have one of. And I'll use myself as an example. This school district only has one business administrator. Bedford only has one business administrator, so the cost of my office is divided over 1,300 or 1,400 students, and the cost of Bedford's finance office is divided over 4,000 students. So cost per pupil is a good comparison. I think it works very well, and that's why the state posts those numbers. These numbers go back to the 90s on the state website, so it's a good website. It's got a lot of information on it. So I'm going to stop there. If that answers your question. No. What, so?
Please use the microphone.
I was hoping for something a little more specific. I think we all understand the concept of overhead.
Okay.
So could you rephrase your question? We just don't understand your question.
Well, I'm just trying to understand, basically, if we have a declining enrollment and if the budget is essentially flat, what the difference is. I understand that, I understand the comparison of district to district. I understand we're a smaller school district in Manchester, and therefore the administration office is going to be spread out over a smaller base. But I'm still trying to do a year-to-year comparison here, and preferably a multi-year comparison.
Are you asking what the cost drivers are for?
Yes, yes, and basically the cost per student driving the budget. Because theoretically, if you have a lot of volume-related decreases, you should also have some budgetary decreases as well.
Got you. Yes. Okay. All right. Dean, I'm sorry, Dwayne, does he understand the question now? The cost drivers have always been health benefits, in this year, New Hampshire retirement, and then special education. Those don't fall evenly with some of the other resource costs that we would see in a typical year. So it's kind of hard to equate those to single students. But those are certainly the big cost drivers this year. They were the big cost drivers last year. Again, benefits retirement, New Hampshire retirement, and the costs that have been passed down to the local districts. Dwayne, I don't know if you want to expand on that?
No, that was good. That was good.
I don't know if that answers your question any better. Okay.
Please.
Jim Hoffman, 3 Nathaniel Drive. First, I'd like to compliment both the administration and the school board for having taken a real serious enrollment problem and addressing that with the area agreement with Dunbarton Schools, the addition of those students, as well as the MOU with, is it Goffstown? No, Hooksett. Okay. So good job on that, and sincere compliments to both groups for having worked the issue. I think what you'll find is that you've gained some flexibility in being able to manage your destiny here, and I like the idea that you've tagged the capacity planning to the number of 660 and all of those kinds of things. So good job, so far so good. The point that I would like to make, though, is similar to the lady who preceded me at this microphone, and it is that as you add incremental volume to a fixed overhead base, you're allocating, to the same principle that was spoken to earlier, you're allocating, that and distributing that cost over a larger number of students. So I would have expected, because I kind of did a little benchmarking when I first came to town. I think the number was $24 million a year, and now it's up to something close to $27 million a year. I understand all the current market conditions with insurance costs and all of those things, but in the end, I would expect some type of an incremental reduction as you bring on the additional enrollment volumes. So great job, you're doing the right things. I just don't see the cost reduction yet. And so perhaps you could speak to that. Thank you.
Well, I'll start, and then I'm going to pass it on to the administration. I think one of the tough things is it's not a one-to-one cost. It's not, you can remove 5 to 10 students from the equation and gain 2 special ed students. Your costs are going to go up. So it's not take away X number of students and take away X number of staff with it. It's not a one-to-one relationship. If it were, I think we would see the excremental the decline like we're talking about here. We have reduced staff, we have reduced programs, we have reduced athletic programs, and it's all due to that decline, but it's not a one-to-one situation. Last year we made cuts in special education. Before the year started, we had people move in where we had to replace those special ed aides because we had 4 or 5 special ed students moving into the district. So it's really a thing of play, and I guess I'll leave it at that it's not a one-to-one relationship like I think you would typically expect. But I can pass that on to Dean or Dwayne.
I think since I've been here with the enrollment decline, we've cut regular education teachers. I mean, as enrollment went down, we looked and we cut. Every year we look at what our enrollments are in each of our grades. I mean, one of the spreadsheets you can look up on the website there shows you the history of our enrollment in K-8. We've looked at the high school. I mean, I remember being in this auditorium 5 years ago when the students were revolting because we were cutting teachers. And, we did that. It was tough work. But other parts of the budget have continued to rise. One of the areas that's very concerning is healthcare costs. And we're in a union environment. And when we get to the article about the support staff, one of the great things about the negotiation this year in the support staff agreement is we began to get concessions on healthcare. And as we come next year with the teacher agreement, that's going to be a major area that we look at. Also with the pressures that are coming down from affordable care or PPACA, whatever you want to call it. Healthcare is something we need to take into account. The other thing that's really happened in New Hampshire has been a downshift from the state to the locality as far as tax burden. You look at what we've lost in educational adequacy aid, what we've lost in building aid, what's been prorated over CAT aid. 2 or 3 years ago when the a certain legislative faction came in the midterm elections, a lot of costs came down to the locals and the local property tax. So yeah, we've lost students, we've cut regular ed to do that, but there are, if you look at the drivers that keep the budget up, it's health insurance. We've had this year with the third year of the teacher's contract, we had to fulfill those contractual obligations. Special ed is a big area that the board is taking a proactive step by doing a pretty good study that we're going to have to look at. But special ed is a cultural and very distributed decision-making sort of area to make changes in. Decisions about what services are provided to students are made in IEP teams. You can't at the very top say, we're going to cut out 7 aides unless you also have a whole culture that is looking at that and saying, how are we going to redo our services so that all those students' needs are met? Otherwise, when all those individual IEP teams start making those decisions, they're making them on the basis of the laws and on the basis of what's in the best interest of that child. We're going to be involved in lawsuits where we've promised to provide services that we're not funding to provide. So it's not a simple matter of saying, okay, we're going to cut that area. You have to go in, you have to make cultural change, you have to do professional development, you have to say, we need to look at this problem and we need to approach it systematically. The board is working on that. And I think there are drivers, it's a pretty simple thing. The number of students go down, why haven't my taxes gone down? And I was so disappointed, personally I was disappointed. There's a taxpayer who sends me emails sometimes and he was like, you promised that my taxes were gonna go down. And I was like, I never promised that. I can't promise you that because I don't control things. I mean, we try to keep our budget down. We've had Dunbarton come in to bring in the revenue up. I didn't foresee what was going to happen with the power station. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm not smart enough. Maybe Dwayne, he didn't see it either. So neither of us saw that coming. There are things outside of our control that we don't do. But I think the long range thing is this board especially, we're trying to look at those long-term cost drivers and say, how do we put them in control? And I was disappointed that it wasn't a decrease this year. I thought, the Dunbarton tuition's going to come in, we're going to bring a budget, and it's going to be a decrease, and the actual tax rate's going to go down. It went down a penny. My friend who writes me the email says, take the penny back. Well, but it was even tough to get to that level, because anytime you try to cut a program, people come out and say, you can't cut that program. I love synchronized swimming. You can't cut synchronized swimming. I mean, I've been synchronized swimming since I was 5 years old. So our thought is, as Dunbarton builds back in and our size builds back into the high school, we're going to be able to control our costs a little bit better because we're not going to build in the same way it was. And that's where we're working on.
And I'll just add that the budget that was initially proposed to the school board was over $425,000 greater than what we ended up presenting to the budget committee. So it takes a series of looks, and we go through every section, every department, and this year especially, what this board doesn't like to just visit the budget once a year. So this year particularly, we took things away from the budget discussions that we then tasked ourselves with to address over the coming year so as to achieve the long-term goals or the long-term savings that we think we can achieve in these different other areas. I think it's a wise approach, but I just want to say that the budget that was initially proposed to us was quite a bit higher than what we ended up presenting to the budget committee and what is being presented tonight.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Bob Eldridge at 13 Meadow Lane. It's the first time I've been to a school meeting in quite some time. But I would like to thank you on looking at the student enrollment decreasing is how we can decrease our operational cost. It's very important to do that. Thank you for the efforts of decreasing the utilities. I understand that was in the top 10 type decreases. And can you share what steps were taken to help bring the utility costs down here for the school?
Besides not turning on the heat.
I did wear my sweater.
That's right. And the lights go off at 9.
I'll just touch on a couple of things. One of the things that we started when I first arrived in 2005, we joined a consortium of local entities, municipal entities, to purchase electricity and natural gas on the open market. So we still belong to that entity. It's us, the City of Concord, Concord School District, and St. Paul's School. We used to have Merrimack Valley was involved in that, but when they built their wood chip system for their largest school, they kind of dropped off of that particular entity. That's been really beneficial. It's been really helpful for us to do that over time. I think the second thing that we've tried to do is to just do some small changes every single summer. One of the big changes a couple years ago was the lights in the high school gym here. If you remember, they were these big, gigantic can lights that, I mean, you could actually, I think, hear the money being spent when you turned them on. We changed those lights. They're more direct now. They're super efficient lights, and we actually put them on motion. So they shut off during the school day, which used to never happen.
Yeah.
So I think it's small things like that. It's buying competitively, or at least doing our very best to buy competitively, and just being, I hope, a culture, because I think our students have this culture of trying to use less.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to use less, and for you to keep working on that, it's very important. Also look at renewable energies also. I know one of the seniors here for Seniors Project did like a wind study. So I think it's important to keep the students involved with that and come up with ideas. How can we further reduce the usage, and how can we keep buying it for less? Because last night I reported the cost of natural gas, comparing from like February of 2012 to February of 2014, the price of natural gas went up about 40% between those months. Traditionally, it's been in double digits during the prime season, decreases in the summer months. But overall, the price of natural gas is definitely going to go up. We're on the end of the distribution pipes. So as the demand picks up before it reaches here, our supply decreases, and our demands are really increasing right now. So I think it's really important how to decrease the usage, and if you need any help or advice, let me know. I work in this industry too.
So do you suggest putting the oil tank back in that we just took
Oh,
out?
no. And just to commend you with the oil tank, if you're not aware, for those of you that are on oil, for each dollar you spend on oil, about 85 cents to 87 cents leaves the state right away out of our economy, and most of that money leaves our country right away. In with the biomass, if we're buying wood within New Hampshire, New England, all that money is staying here with New England, so I encourage the biomass also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob, I wanted to add one more thing. Dwayne is very humble about this, and I'm sure he'd listen to any ideas you have, but on behalf of the board, I really want to say that he's always coming up with new ideas, always looking for energy, and I almost think it's like a hobby, Dwayne. Because he'll come to a board meeting, he'll be like, oh, I got another idea.
Yeah,
so
good.
He's very good about that.
Thank you.
A lot of help.
Please.
John Karen, 24 Putney Road, Bow. I have several questions. I promised Robert Loof that I would be nice to him.
Easy questions, easy one.
Easy questions. But I do have an observation out of the budget, and I've got a couple of questions. That the regular education, the special education budget is approaching 50% of the regular education budget. And I'm kind of curious about, I don't know the number of kids who are reflected in that budget versus the kids who are reflected in the regular education budget. And I don't want to get into personal information. It's none of my business. But it is my business to be concerned about seeing that number approach that high a value, one I would not have suspected.
Okay.
Well, I got more, but...
Oh, okay.
No.
Well, and I will say this. The board shares that sentiment. And that's exactly why, together with the administration, we commissioned a report, a very extensive report, to better understand the Bow services compared to other districts our size and within the state, so that we can try to find out, are our services above and beyond? Are we doing above and beyond perhaps what other districts are? Are we doing less? Where do we fit? Because that's the sentiment that we have, and surely what we hear is that you know, you do too much for special education, you don't do enough, and we need to find out exactly what it is so we can answer the questions that you're bringing. So we share that sentiment, and I think that the report will be done and be made public soon. So I will surely keep you abreast of that, but we share that same sentiment.
I guess looking at that number growing, and I look forward to seeing your report, are we considering different sources of education for special education? Other places for money? You know, like Spalding Youth Center is primarily special education program, but they diversify their income flow. Are we thinking about doing that? That's a question you can answer later. It's just a thought I had on that.
Okay, I'll answer that later.
Sure, I will make you. And so that the two gentlemen on the end don't get caught again, PSNH has filed for another abatement. So we should all be kind of prepared for a little more sticker shock coming down to us. And the county share of taxes is going up by about 5% this year. So it's another grab into our pocketbooks from another arena. And I'll finish with this. When I went to school, I was a very mechanical-oriented guy. Part of my education was devoted to fixing things or making them work better or designing and building them. Until I was a senior, I decided I would take a course in Aristotelian logic. Changed my life. But I heard this last night, so I had to go home and check out whether or not what I heard was correct. Last year, Dr. Cascadden said that, you know, we had studied this whole thing, it was 2 years ago, of how we would assimilate the Dunbarton kids into this plan, right down to elementary, so that when they came here, going into the middle school would not be a big deal. Now, tonight I hear that we're interested, and I've heard this last night, because there's this wonderful school system, to attract people to come here and live in Bow. If I'm looking for a place to live, and I want my kids to go to this wonderful institution, the tax rate in Dunbarton is $20.01. The tax rate in Bow is $30.19. Logically, would I look for a place in Bow or Dunbarton to have my kids go to this school system? That's kind of an unfair proposition to us, isn't it? And we've got to deal with that. Well, some realtor is going to figure that out.
I would wager they probably already have. I think that is the quintessential decision that we had to make, because if we didn't entertain Dunbarton and the enrollment kept on the decline, and I will say this, it's every single district that I have witnessed or visited in the state is experiencing the same thing. Even a school the size of Pinkerton is courting Hooksett because they don't have the population anymore. So it's not just a Bow issue, it's every single district is having this particular issue. And so for us, it was, do we entertain Dunbarton and bring our levels back up? Now, that's the downside. Or do we not, because we don't want people moving to Dunbarton and keep the decline. I guess it's what plus and what minus do you want to look at? I mean, hopefully things will level off in Bow, and if you're going to move to, I would argue if you want to move to Dunbarton, that's fine, but there are amenities in Bow that are going to keep me here and not move to Dunbarton. So it's a plus or minus. I don't know how to answer that anymore, John, but it's a valid point.
It's a very difficult situation to be in.
Yeah.
Thanks for your patience.
I appreciate it.
And I would support the budget.
Hi, Pam Cafaso, 13 Abbey Road. I hope my question is much simpler. I was just wondering if you have any data at this point as to, regarding special education, what proportion of special ed kids to regular kids do we have compared to other towns?
I think the thing that we're going to have to look at Bow is our model of special education delivery has been very open. We have RTI in the elementary school, and in the high school we have our support rooms that are open to any student who desires support. Those are all funded out of or the majority of it is funded out of special ed funds. So that was one of the first things they said when they came here. It's amazing how much support you provide to every single student if they need support. They don't have to be identified. They just have to say, I'd like some help. And officially identified, I think the percentage is down in the low teens, which is lower than most other places. But students who actually access our special ed support is like 37%, because it's open to any student who says, I need help. Or it's open to a student who begins to falter in reading and we say, oh, you know, with a little extra help, you can move forward. So I think that's going to be the big issue that we move forward as we look at special ed. That's the complicating factor of the way that we've set up our program here. We have excellent schools, and we have a lot of people in those schools dedicated to make sure that kids do well. And we don't put a label on the kids, special ed, 504, regular ed students, and only say that certain kids can receive the help. And that's, I think, going to be our biggest kind of debate as we move forward.
Hi, Jim Barker from Birchdale Road, and what I want to pass along is a sentiment of thankfulness. I want to share just a bit of context, having attended the meeting last night and having heard some remarks about the quality of our school district, as well as other aspects of the meeting last night. This morning, I spoke with a colleague who lives in Dunbarton and learned that they have a volunteer fire department. I'm not here to judge that. And she believes that they have 2 or 3 full-time police officers. So I fear that when we compare tax rates in towns like Dunbarton to towns like Bow, unless we disclose full information, and that's very difficult in settings like this or last night, we're doing a great disservice to our public servants in all areas, the schools, the fire safety, and the police. Bedford was also mentioned in that conversation last night. Bedford is 3 times the size of Bow, both in terms of population and valuation. I looked at it this morning. $3 billion versus $1 billion. So of course, with some pretty basic math, you can take a smaller slice of a larger pie, not to mention spread that out over a larger number of students, and have numbers that work better. I moved here 5 years ago. One of the main reasons was I have 3 kids in the Bow Public Schools, and I wanted them to be here. So I thank the people who are taking a reasoned approach to working through a difficult time. I don't personally believe that cutting spending is always the answer. Reasoned approach, balancing additional revenue with cuts. Tonight we're here to talk about the schools. I thank you for taking the approach that you are.
Thank you. Please.
I would just like to comment that I would appreciate it if, in the negotiations of next year's teacher contract, fair market value, that being the marketplace at large, be considered instead of other school districts when we're talking about healthcare cost and retirement benefits. Thank you.
Hopefully the last one. Lisa Cohen, Brown Hill Road. I do want to say that I support our schools. My daughter this is her first year in public school. I did have her in private school for other reasons. She's not a special ed student. But I gotta say, having come into the elementary school this year, in the middle of elementary school, she's in 3rd grade, it's been amazing the support she's gotten, the friends that she's made, the teachers have been amazing. She is just bursting every day when she comes home, except when I yell at her because she forgot her homework folder again. And we have friends who do have special ed issues. And I'm a former teacher, so I know all about IEPs and 504s, and I'm not an educator anymore for a lot of reasons, but we won't get into this. So I do support the budget. Yes, I would love to see it come down. We all would. We've already got issues, as most of you who were here last night know. We're dealing with those. The difference is with a school building, you're housing our children, you're housing our teachers, our educators, our custodial staff, all of them, they all count. There's a reason why we have those buildings, and as long as they're kept in good shape, and I know that we occasionally have issues like we had with the utilities this winter, those things happen. And as long as we're keeping up with that, and we keep our buildings in good shape, and we keep our good teachers, and kids like mine can come in and say, wow, Mom, I had a great day at school, this was awesome when we did this, and by the way, our DI teams kick butt. And we go up against Bedford. So whenever you hear those comparisons with Bow and Bedford, it's our education. It has nothing to do with size. It has to do with the quality of life. The difference is, yes, it is cheaper to live in Bedford tax-wise, but people want to live in Bow. And keep that in mind. Thank you very much.
And I just want to add that the school board and the administration work collaboratively with the select board. So one of the reasons why when we went into budget negotiations this year that we wanted to come out at least tax neutral is because we knew what was going to be happening on the town side as well as what was happening with PSNH. So I just wanted to throw that out there that we all try to work collaboratively so that we try to spend every dollar as wisely as we can. And by the way, if anybody wants to know why we are better than Bedford, please come and talk to me after the meeting.
No need to move the question because no one's at the microphone. So at this point, I will call for a vote on Article 2 as presented in the warrant. If you are in favor of Article 2, please indicate by raising your hand with your wristband. Thank you. Put your arms down. And if you are opposed to Article 2, please raise your hand. Okay, as a vote in the affirmative, and I so declare it, Article 2 passes. We are now going to discuss Article 3, and I will paraphrase a little. Article 3, to see if the school district will vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement with the Bow Education Support Staff Association, which calls for increases in salaries and benefits at the current levels of, for the fiscal year 2014 to 2015, $84,424, and 2015 to 2016, $109,427, and to further raise and appropriate the sum of $84,424 for the current fiscal year. Such sums representing the additional cost attributed to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at current staffing levels. This is recommended by the school board 5-0 and recommended by the budget committee 7-0. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I make the motion to accept Article 3 as presented.
Article 3 has been moved as presented in the warrant. Do I have a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded, and at this point I'll recognize Dee for a presentation.
The BES agreement, this is a 2-year agreement. This is an association that covers 95 employees here in the district. Positions include special education assistants, nurse assistants, library assistant, speech assistants, and clerical positions. The agreement calls for a 2% wage scale increase in both years of the agreement. The hourly wages range from $9.61 to $23.49 in 1 year of agreement, depending on position. The average yearly wage in year one is $19,948. The health insurance changes that were made in this agreement, the doctor copay would be increasing from $5 to $20. The prescription drug copay is increasing from $10, $20, $45 to $10, $40, $70. Those are dollar amounts. The district will now have the ability to offer the high deductible health plan in addition to the current POS and HMO offerings that we have. And the health insurance savings in year one will be $37,300. This savings is based on the known rates for next year and the current elections of the BESS employees. Oops, just lost my last note. The year one warrant cost is a wage increase of $101,985. The benefit cost tied to the wage increase is $19,739. The health insurance savings is negative $37,300 or $37,300. And the warrant article figure is $84,424. Estimated tax impact is 0.08 or 8 cents on a $1,000 value. And the percentage tax rate is plus 41%. Oh, sorry, 0.41%. Whoops. Little shock value, just seeing if you're paying attention. I was on the negotiating committee representing the board with Ginger Frazier, and I wanted to state for the board the comments and the experience of doing these negotiations, that we really felt that was a win-win situation. Both sides listened to each other's concerns and needs. Both sides had different attorneys representing them from previous years. In fact, our attorney on the district side is a Bow resident. And we heard each other, we both made compromises, and again, it was very amiable, and I think it was a win-win for both. We decided to go with the 2 years because of the unpredictable healthcare costs. We felt like any longer was making plans or other factors could come into play that neither side knew what was going to happen. So we felt like 1 year was too little, but 2 years was a safe bet for all.
Okay. Would anyone like to speak to Article 3? It was a race. You won.
I'm Tom Branscombe from ECU Drive. You just need to help me with the math a little bit. Your chart said that wages were going up 2%, and the other chart you had showed a bill for next year of $85,000, and the one for the following year is $129,000. That's about or what was it? I forgot the number now. I'm sorry. In rough numbers, it's about a 30% increase in the second year of the contract. So if it's only 2% in wages, where's the other 30%? And what's the percentage increase? Clearly, it's not a 2% increase in the first year. So we went from something to 84. Do you know what the something is?
I should add, just to explain the second year, and then I'll let Dwayne take it from there. But we have the rates in the current elections for this year, or the projected year, but we don't know for the following year. So we can't project any rates for the following year because of that. So that's why you see that number there.
the question is, what, the wage increase for this year is a little over 100,000, so it's 101,985. The number that you're voting on for the year one takes into account the savings. I think you know that. But is the question, what is it now, and what will the increase be?
Yeah, I guess what I don't understand is it's what is clear from the number is that in the second year of this contract, we're increasing by 30%, not 2%.
Oh,
right?
but
And the number that I can't tell is you don't tell me what it's costing this year, so I can't tell the 84,000, is that a 2% increase over this year?
Right.
Or is that a 30% increase over this year as well?
Right, and I'm going to turn it over to Dwayne, but before I do, are you subtracting the 109 from the 84? Is it up there? Yeah, are you subtracting those two numbers? Because the 109 doesn't reflect any insurance savings. So whereas the 84 does. It's really 101 to 109 is the increase from this coming year to the 2015-2016. The 84 takes into account the insurance savings we know we're going to realize this coming school district, but we don't know what that is going to be for 15-16, so we have to figure in the total wage increase. So it's a little bit deceptive. See, I was right. But Dwayne, you want to expound on that?
So in the first year, the way that we calculate the warrant is we're going to look at all of the additional costs, but when there are health insurance changes, because we know the rates, we can calculate what the estimated change is going to be, and we don't have to raise that amount of money. If we didn't calculate that, we would be raising more money. In the second year of the agreement, I don't know what the rates are going to be, so I can't estimate what the health insurance savings are going to be. So there's no money up or down for the health insurance concessions in the second year. So your question, in the second year of the agreement, the wage increase is $91,682. It's actually less than it is in the first year. And the reason for that is, as part of this agreement, as well as our teacher agreement, we have not only an increase to the salary schedule, which is all those hourly rates, but we also have people who move from one step to another. So there's a cost to that. In the second year of the agreement, more people will be at the top of the salary schedule and won't receive any step increase. So that's why the salary amount will go down. So if you were going to compare wage to wage, it's $101,985 to $91,682. If you were going to compare the benefits cost that's applicable to that wage, in year one, it's $19,739 compared to $17,745. So the $17,745 plus $91,682, that's where the $109,427 comes from. But because we have insurance changes in the first year, and I can calculate that amount, we're going to take that off what needs to be raised and appropriated so we don't raise too much money in the first year. I don't know what that number is going to be in the second year, so we don't list it. So that's why the number goes up in the second year.
Does that answer the question, Tom?
Whatever.
Almost, but you just raised kind of a second one, which is when you say that the wage increase is going up 2%, do you mean, to take Wayne's numbers, that the whole table moved up 2%? Correct. So everybody's getting a step increase plus 2%. So the real average wage increase for most people is going to be bigger than 2%, right? What's the real increase in wages for most people?
The real increase in wages would average just over 4%, because the step increase is 4% and the wage scale's going up 2%. About half of this group is at the top of the salary schedule. So those employees are only going to receive the 2% to the schedule. When we put it up on the slide, the 2% figure was the increase to the salary wage schedule.
Just to the table.
Right, to the table.
All right. Yep. I sure hope I can book a 4% wage increase in the next 2 years myself.
Thank you. Are you on a step scale now?
I am not.
Well, there you go.
Go ahead.
Julie Jocelyn, 26 Woodhill Road. I'm just wondering how long it's been since this group of people has gotten a raise. That's not just its typical step raises that had a percentage raise.
They have a bargaining agreement that's in place right now. The last bargaining agreement that they had called for, and I'm going from memory, so I might be off a little bit, but I believe their last agreement was 1.5% to the schedule in the first year and 2% in the second year. That agreement ends June 30, 2014.
Okay, so basically, they've gotten a raise every single year, percentage-wise, through these contracts, regardless of what the economy was.
Since I've been in Bow, this bargaining group has always negotiated an agreement, and it has always been passed at town meeting, this meeting.
Thank you.
I think it's important to note that, just a reminder that the average yearly wage we're talking about here is $19,948.
Please.
Hello, Robin Martin, 8 Tonga Drive. I just have a question because the insurance cost is what I'm most concerned about, because that is what is really going up and up and up and up and up. And what I saw was a really good plus as far as the taxpayer and that insurance costs, and the BES employees are going to be more responsible for co-pays and out-of-pocket. So Dwayne, I understand it's a $37,000 savings year one. You don't know what the savings may or may not be in year two. But I think this was a pretty good thing for the bargaining table, coming from the side of the, the people that this benefits, the support staff. Now, I have to tell you, I am an employee. I'm a support staff employee. I do not take insurance. I'm very fortunate that my husband's company is able for less out of pocket. So I am, speaking for the people that I work with, but I do know that for many, many years, insurance was an unapproachable subject. And I think this year, there was a big compromise that was made. So thank you.
And I think, too, that one thing that we want to point out is the fact that as a result of these negotiations, our ability to now offer the high deductible health plan, there are savings in that ability that we can't calculate or put up on the screen. But just the ability to be able to offer that to staff, knowing that there are staff members who may very well take advantage of that and lower our costs more. I wish we could put a number to that, but that's one of the big pluses coming out of these negotiations, and then being able to take this momentum and moving them into the BEA negotiations next year, which is, as everybody knows, a much larger population of our employees here. So it was kind of a two-phase, two-step kind of thing, and then the changes that are made on health insurance, we also want to extend into administration as well. So there are additional savings there, but this would have to pass. Thanks.
And I just wanted to add that, during negotiations, regarding the win-win, I think it's important to note that the savings for the health insurance is not just for the district, but the employees benefit greatly as well.
Please.
Maureen Liakis, Clearview Drive. Would you tell how much the employees have to pay? They pay a portion of their insurance. It's not given to them. How much do they have to pay?
We have different cost-sharing programs for different categories of employees. In this particular group, the district pays 90% of single insurance, and the employee pays 10%. For two-person, it's a 50-50 cost share, so the district pays 50% of the premium cost, the employee pays 50%. And for family insurance, the district pays the same amount that they would pay towards single towards family, and that works out to about 30% of the total premium cost that the district pays. This particular group, when you get beyond single insurance, the employee pays a considerable amount towards their coverage.
Okay. All right, I see no others at the microphone, so at this point, I will ask for the vote on Article 3. All those in favor of Article 3, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. Please put your hand down. All those opposed, please raise your hand. The ayes have it. It is a vote in the affirmative, and I so declare it. Article 4 is skipped over because Article 3 was approved, so we're now on to Article 5. To see if the school district will vote to establish a capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35:1 for the purpose of future capital improvements at Bow High School and Bow Memorial School. The funding between the Dunbarton, the funding for this capital reserve account to come from the capital improvement fees as defined in the area agreement between the Dunbarton and the Bow school districts that calls for the payment of said fees. And the name of this capital reserve fund shall be Area School Capital Improvements Dunbarton fees. It's recommended by the school board 5-0. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move to accept Article 5 as presented.
I second.
Okay. And at this point, ask Robert Lou for discussion.
All right. So this is another Dunbarton-related issue. It is to create a new capital reserve account in which the fees paid by the Dunbarton students coming to Bow will be deposited in. When we created the area agreement, one of the things that we did with Dunbarton is create a capital improvement fee to be allotted and associated with each student. When we presented this brand new idea to the Department of Education and the DRA, the people who control the purse strings, they wanted to make sure that the money was going into an account and being kept separate from any other general funds or any other capital reserve funds that we had. So we agreed that we would create a capital reserve fund specific for the fees related to Dunbarton students. Currently, going into the 2014-2015 year, the fee is $250 per student, and it's adjusted each year by the Consumer Price Index. The next one, the fee must be deposited in the non-lapsing capital reserve fund. That's what we're voting to approve tonight. The next one's important. Without this capital reserve account, we cannot collect the fees because we need something to put the fees into in order to collect them. If we don't have something to put them into, we can't collect them. In which case, we would have to return them to Dunbarton, and I'm sure we don't want that to happen. The capital improvement fee is to be used for capital improvements either at the middle school or the high school. And there are 6 different specific things that define what this money can be used for, and they're outlined in the area agreement that's online if anybody wants to read those. But the existing capital, the reserve money from these funds can be combined with the other capital reserve funds that we have. We have capital reserve funds right now for the high school and the middle school as well, and we can combine those if we needed to. So the money is deposited from Dunbarton students, but it's administered by Bow. And then the last bullet item, there will be a yearly request to deposit these funds because the taxpayer spends the money. We can't spend the money, we can collect it, and you tell us where to deposit it. And so you'll see a capital reserve account article each year with the amount to be deposited into this new capital reserve account. So we strongly urge the passage of this article so that we can collect the fees. And that's about it.
Please.
John Karen, Putney Road. I just have as a member of the Board of Trustees, working with the reserve accounts. Are you requesting you are requesting the creation of a new capital reserve fund?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Which would be administered by the trustees of the town?
I believe, correct, right?
Is that correct?
Yep.
Yep.
We will have the money.
Correct.
Yep.
So all of it, just make sure you have the language right.
Yep.
All of the funds that we get
Yep.
are jointly deposited. There's no separate account where we put the money for your capital reserve fund. The capital reserve fund is then apportioned earnings based on its relative share of the fund. So,
I think correct.
I mean, I don't want you to go out and say something that's
right.
Go to Dunbarton and say there's a separate account over here. And
right. Oh,
there is an account, but it's part of the total trust account.
right.
Is that okay,
Yep.
Mr. Ford?
Right.
That's-
Yes. Yep.
We're all
I
good?
think
Getting a
he's-
thumbs up from our
I think you
attorney.
just used a different terminology. I mean, yes, that we know that.
Okay, we're all on the same page.
Okay.
Right.
All right, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Along with the cemetery.
Thank you, John.
There too.
Susan Valaire, 8 Edgewood. I just had a question about the fee, and is that $250 fee also assessed to Hooksett students?
Great question. Yes.
And does the money that's collected from Hooksett students also need to go into that account?
No,
Or
because-
is that simply collected as part of their tuition?
Correct, the latter, because we don't have that kind of formal agreement with Hooksett. The agreement with Hooksett is very different. The MOU agreement is such that we don't have to take any Hooksett students. They don't have to send any to Bow. The area agreement is very different. Dunbarton will send all of its students here. We will accept all of them here. So the agreement's different, and the cost structure is different. And in fact, the tuition for Hooksett and for outside students are what we charge Dunbarton plus that capital improvement fee.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Please.
John Erdy, 51 Putney Road. Just a point of clarification. With this money going into this fund, it's going to be appropriated for repairs, whatever needs to be done to those two buildings by Dunbarton Bow students. Is there a vote to take money out of that? And does that vote include Dunbarton agreeing to that?
No,
You just tell them that this is the bill and that's paid.
Well, there are items specifically in the area agreement that state what the money or the project, the size of the project that can be the money can be spent on. But it's Bow's decision to spend it. We don't have to get Dunbarton's okay. We have to abide by the area agreement. But the purpose of this is not to address wear and tear items, because that gets apportioned to the general budget, and it's more to address the small to medium sized projects that we may incur, if we incur any. But it's more to address those, and the goal is to amass the amounts over the years, and so that we have a nice, healthy capital reserve fund at the end of the term, area term.
But Dunbarton will not have a say as to whether or not they agree that this needs to be done.
No, as long as we abide by the
Okay.
area agreement specific, and it's spelled out very specifically in the area agreement.
Okay, any other further discussion on Article 5? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 5, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Okay, the ayes have it as a vote in the affirmative. And that brings us to the conclusion of business. Is there any other business before the meeting? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. We're adjourned. Thank you all.